This is the Conscious Hour, and we need to pay attention to this one. It's really critical. Everybody knows about BRICS, meaning the banking community knows about BRICS. BRICS is a direct threat to the United States because the dollar cannot be used anymore with BRICS nations. They don't need it, they don't need us. And that means that the US won't have the leverage it's always had. Listen closely to this report. This is excellent. Pepe Escobar and Danny Haifong. Listen closely.
Really wants to, of course, export to China at huge levels, but Russia is taking over in that regard. And I think this energy is such a huge part of this. Russia and Iran are huge energy powers. And how does this play out then when it comes to this escalating war that the United States under Trump and whoever it is on the multipolar world? Because this is a big part of everything you just mentioned too: the de-dollarization, the independent financial architecture.
Of course, and because from the point of view of the Trump administration, the number one obsession is the control of oil and the control of energy everywhere, and the control of who sells oil to whom, and it has to be paid in US dollars. This is the number one zero beyond zero obsession and paranoia if anybody is trading energy bypassing the US dollar, which is the case, of course, of Russia and China. We have powers of Siberia, breaking, pulling all stops, going beyond and beyond. We're going to have power in Siberia too, through Mongolia in the next, 3, 4 years maximum. Uh, they're buying from you everything that they bought from Venezuela. They are buying from Iran now, and the Chinese are not worried. The Chinese know that all our key sources of energy, they are there, they are protected, and some of them want to sell even more to us, which is the case of Saudi Arabia. But that where's the petro yuan comes in, Danny, and that's what's becoming very complicated because MBS has to convince Trump that he's still selling oil to China in dollars. That's not the case. The Chinese already, I would say, they read their Chinese Riot Act to MBS. Listen, from now on is only Petro Yuan. How is he going to sell this to Washington Mar-a-Lago? Practically impossible.
Imagine that. You don't use US dollars. Folks, it's happening. There's 10 nations now that have signed up for BRICS. There could be as many as 40 that will be joining BRICS, meaning they don't use the dollar. Pay attention.
Right? An extra reason for MBS to interfere with the Americans. They say, don't attack Iran because it's going to be the destruction of all of us in the Persian Gulf. Of course, Saudi Arabia is going to lose a lot. And if American bases in Saudi Arabia are attacked, you name it, blocking of the Strait of Hormuz, if it happens, you name it, all that, all that. So the Saudi position is very, very tricky, but they are leaning towards a diplomatic solution, which is a great, great thing. And don't forget that the approximation between Saudi and Iran started in Russia, and then they threw the ball to China, and it was clinched by Beijing. So obviously, the Saudis look around; they can understand when you become an enemy of China, you're an enemy of China forever. If China looks at you and says you are a friend of China, you have a friend with the Chinese also forever. So
And I want to tell you a little story on that one. When I was in the windsurfing business, the first place I went was Taiwan in Kaohsiung, which is the southern part of Taiwan. And Mr. Rohn, was Dasheng Yachts. Well, he was building our fiberglass sailboards. And one of the trips back over there, he asked me, he says, would you be at dinner tonight? We're having a big dinner tonight, so I want you to come. I said, sure, I'll be there. I didn't know that what was going to happen. And what would happen was this: I was accepted into the Chinese family. And that was the biggest honor I'd ever had in my life. Why? Because I love Chinese food. I hate American food, and I love the Chinese culture. And all of a sudden, I'm accepted, and it just popped up here, and it made me understand and realize that I've always been a globalist. I've never been this thing tied to this American flag. Why? Because we all go to constant wars and we want to tell the world what we want done and that we don't consider making them part of our family, which is what the Chinese do. Let's get back into this one.
These calculations come into play, very, very important. And shows that the chessboard is moving in real time, really. And the Americans cannot count on vassals just abiding by his master's order. That's definitely over.
Yeah.
So can you imagine? Well, this guy cannot sleep at night. No?
If the Strait of Hormuz is closed by Iran, uh, would it be the case that China, there's a lot of course, oil activity that comes through this strait? Would China do what it's doing now, which is increasing oil and energy trade with Russia? Would this be how they? Because a lot of people have made a lot of Western mainstream media, the Iranian International, the Tel Aviv backed so-called Iranian outlet. They're all making the case that if the Strait of Hormuz was closed, it would be a disaster for China, in part Russia. But I'm wondering if there's a way around this because the panic, at least, it seems to be mainly on the side of the Gulf countries who rely on the Strait of Hormuz and of the United States as well.
Iran would only close the Strait of Hormuz. This, in fact, this is their ace of spades. The last possible measure. And if they are directly attacked, and if they think that this might change the game. And of course, after consultations with Russia and China, especially with China. The Chinese may say, look, you can close for a few days. Why not? That's a possible scenario. They examine what they have in terms of reserves. I say, yeah, we could live, 10 days, 2 weeks with our reserves. And then it's reopened. And obviously, the Chinese would be pointing at a lightning strike war, kind of like the Iranians have enough or what it takes for a lightning strike counter war if they are attacked. So this thing could end in a week. The thing is, a prolonged attack by the Americans, which would force the Iranians to close the Strait of Hormuz, that's certified collapse of the international financial system. And one of my latest columns was explicitly about that, based on all the gaming that Goldman Sachs derivatives experts were doing in the previous decade. I remember writing a lot about that about around 2016, 17, 18, and all that. And now the numbers are even worse. And the overall prediction, which ties up when you talk to Persian Gulf traders, is that if this thing goes for over a week, the barrel of oil could reach $700, not 100, 200, like the stupid Bloomberg articles coming out these past few days. No, it gets to 700, and the collapse of the gigantic intergalactic pile of derivatives. That everybody knows that. People in the international financial system know that. Wall Street knows that. The Americans, I assume somebody in the Trump administration knows that. The Iranians know that, and everybody in the Persian Gulf, the traders, everybody knows that. But that would be an extreme measure. So the Americans, those once again with the IQ over 10, they know that if Trump wants to destroy the global economy, in fact, not the American economy, the global economy, he could do something to force the Iranians to close Hormuz. So,
and at that point, you have a crash in the United States because they've just been isolated from the world. And they want to attack Israel? I mean, Iran? No way. If they attack Iran, Israel's gone. Hypersonic missiles, all shot at the same time. They're done. This is the Conscious Hour. Please share, like, spread it, donate to the 501c3. All money that comes in will go out to help people in need. Thank you very much for watching the Conscious Hour.